This is the next episode of the No Damns Given podcast. And we're back at the farm today, or at the farmhouse. We're getting ready for our next event out at the farm, which will be March the 20th. Please put that note on your calendar. We're going to have at least 6 speakers. We're going to talk about various subjects of permaculture, water usage and how it affects our crops and the water table. We'll have True Earth, Claude, who is with us today. Claude Galipeau is going to give a talk there, and we'll talk about our experience with cannabis farming last year. And so...
and my favorite, poop.
And it only took us 30 seconds where she started talking about poop. You actually can't talk about permaculture without talking about poop.
I was born for this.
That leads us into talking to Claude and True Earth. Oh, soil to oil. Tell us. So introduce yourself. Tell us, everybody, a little bit about where you are, where you came from, and how you got to. How did you meet Trip Morgan?
Trip Morgan. I think I was...
I love referring to myself in the third person.
Well, I'm Claude Galipeau. I'm the owner of True Earth, and we were a fertilizer. We started out as a fertilizer company. We developed that and got to learning about the benefits. And people... my wife got really sick and shifted my interest into functional medicine. And hemp was one of the things that, I felt like our products would really benefit. So I went online one day. There was a little thing come across there about this event. I think it was in... Oh, where was it at?
I think we're over in Tifton.
No, it wasn't Tifton. It was
somewhere near Tifton.
Yeah.
It was over on that side of the state. Because where do you live now?
No, it's Savannah, Georgia.
Yeah, here in Savannah, Georgia, big city. So we might have been closer. We might have been over near Metter or somewhere like that.
I think it was Metter, but anyway.
We were over on that side of the state, yeah.
So I popped in there and just listened to everybody talk, and Lewis doing his thing, and Albert, and basically came back 2 more times, and I think on the 3rd time I presented myself to you and introduced myself and told you about what I do.
Yeah.
And it's been a great experience so far. We had a great year last year.
What do you do? So tell everybody, because I think it's most interesting. I mean, so you've got a chemist.
It was all about food.
A physician pharmacist, and
a power engineer.
Power engineer. Yeah. Okay, so very broad, diverse education, but we've all kind of funneled into this area. So how did power engineering get you into soil to oil?
Well, it really gave me the basic of energy, right? Basically, I'm a biomass. That's my discipline. I've invented some process for the utilities about biomass. So hemp is a very good biomass and wanted more. But mostly I got interested in the functional medicine because it saved my life. I mean, saved my wife and my life with her illness. She had pancreatic cancer and very bad, 2% chance of surviving, 6 months to live, and one crazy guy in Savannah that's been an herbalist for 40 years and a doctor from Memorial came to our rescue, and we did some protocols. And after we were given that she was cancer free, and this is 6 years ago,
wow,
I got into I didn't have to wash clothes anymore. I'm good so I've been on a free ride for 6 years, I guess. She's my best friend. We've been married 43 years.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. So anyway, just really started getting great result with the fertilizer, and I knew that we can apply it, and I started growing turmeric and ginger and all kinds of different herbs. And we grow in Colorado, we grow in Hawaii, we grow in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, the ginseng. And last year we did a project together. Right?
So one thing with Claude,
like Oshkosh Bagosh.
That is
like there's a Timbuktu, New Jersey, but it's like
no Oshkosh Bagosh. That's it. That's where it's at.
So one thing about Claude is he has an infectious personality, and so when you meet him, I mean, we've basically hit it off from the very beginning, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we've been
Great
going
barbecue,
We've
that's
been,
what I went
yeah,
for.
we've been creating. We've been going ever since, trying to find different ways that we could collaborate. And so I'm not at all shocked to hear that you have farms. You have farms all over the state that you
Right,
work
in
with.
Hawaii too. we
And
grow
we've got
ginger and
farms all
turmeric.
over the United
Right.
States, including the outside of just continental USA.
That is actually borderline genius. So when you go out to
No, it's not
visit,
genius.
is that like a tax write off for business
Definitely,
travel?
yeah. No, but it really developed and just starts. People started calling and just talking about the effects of functional medicine. You and I talked about functional medicine in depth. About there's so much more to learn. I mean, for a power engineer guy, just to get a vision, I built a huge aquaponic system, grew fish underneath the house, and then now the university's taken over that system and they're studying it. But the fertilizer came from the aquaponic system.
You had your own poop pets.
Yeah, I did. Generate a lot of
It's a
poop.
symbiotic relationship.
That's right. But no, it's then I started inventing some equipment, and you're using some of that right now at your farm, and some protocols that people just lost touch with the soil. So we're all about from the soil to oil.
Right. And so I like it because of the functional medicine concept. And I think, and let's talk about I'm going to at least introduce the idea of the symbiosis between your gut bacterial content and the soil's bacterial content, and how they both work very similarly for both the health of the soil's not healthy unless it has a healthy microbiome, and your gut's not healthy unless it has a healthy microbiome. And a lot of what your intestines do is break down the food that you put inside and then provide that as micronutrients to the rest of the body. And so when it doesn't happen that way is when a lot of
problems.
a lot of our disease develops. And so we actually know how to cure most chronic disease.
Yeah.
We just sort of refuse to do it.
Right. We just treat
It's
symptoms.
infuriating.
Diabetes is 100%
Because it's not
curable.
profitable.
Hypertension is curable. Hypercholesterolemia is curable. Cardiovascular disease, most of it could be prevented. So it's just an understanding and not dealing. And I really like the functional medicine compost because it gives to the problem the diversity and complexity that it actually has.
Yeah.
I mean, it has so much diversity and complexity that it's not a one shoe or a one size fits all fix. So how does that relate to the soil?
Well, I mean, basically, I think if the nutrients are not there and there's not nutrients transfer in the network of myceliums and all the bugs that makes and moves food from the soil to the plant. I mean, that's how they all work together. So if we are using things that are reducing those levels in the soil, like synthetic chemicals and all, basically, it's not transferring to the plant. So the plants is going from synthetic chemistry to food. And it's a huge difference in nutrients value. I mean, I think you said something earlier that really was profound to me about the pomegranate seed. Mm-hmm. Share what you said.
It's not the seed. It's the
color or
the
something,
Mm-hmm.
phytochemical and the
Polyphenol.
The polyphenols in that have been Dr. Liu, this is not me, obviously, it's Dr. Liu, How to Eat to Beat Disease, but it's been studied in several studies. And once again, it's poop. And so if you have a high level of polyphenols, which encourage a certain bacteria, if you have that bacteria in your intestines, there's several cancers which number one, you're much more likely to survive them, and you're much more likely to do well with chemotherapy.
Right.
And so that's amazing.
But that's exactly
and not only that, but the particular bacteria doesn't do well you can't just take it.
Right.
I mean, it can't be. You actually have to provide the right environment within the gut to encourage its growth.
Right.
And so it's the same idea. So how do we create these things in both health and disease for humans, but also do the same thing in land?
Right. Well, actually, it's a symbiotic relationship. I mean, I always go back to my mind whenever I think about projects and things that I need to shore up is that's dust to dust. I mean, we come from the earth, right?
Yeah. And that's one of the things actually that one of my favorite quotes is be humble be noble because you're made of stars, but humble because you're made of earth.
Right.
And it's like one of the things that I really liked about like chemistry is the realization that we're all made of atoms, but two different systems that you would not think is that like we highly evolved beings, humans, are so dependent on a microflora or like diversity of a microflora system to be healthy and survive. And soil, dirt, is also
That's
completely
the beginning.
dependent on that.
It's the
And
beginning,
So you have
right?
these two seemingly completely different things, soil and humans, but they're both really dependent and healthiest and thrive and need diverse microflora environments. Now they're not the same, but the similarity between that, I don't know, it's like a beautiful thing about science to be able to see the similarities in that. And
Right.
exactly like dust to dust, because whole systems thinking, and I think that's what I really like about permaculture is it's like coming back and seeing how everything works synergistically and together.
Permaculture,
And that's also why I like hemp, I guess.
plants are helping other plants.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, some transfer nutrients in the soil. I mean, I look at this as it starts in a nanoform, right? So every
I
little
love
guy
that.
that's the one that's moving all the nutrients from one
From
place.
atomic to whole systems.
Yeah.
I love it. Love
Yeah.
it.
But I mean, understanding that, and there's also bad bacteria and bad things in the soil. People build compost and do things like that, and there's some bad things in there that you don't want. So you have to understand, the life cycle from the soil, and everything works right there. And the plant's more healthy, vibrant. You don't have to use chemicals for pesticide, herbicide. Their resistance, they put on their coat of armor. Like a tomato doesn't put its last bit of nutrients in the last week of its life. But we pick it 3 weeks early, green, put it in a truck and ship it. So it's shipped without the goodies.
Without the nutrient.
actually-
That's so interesting.
What-
Yeah. And like corn. So regenerative farming.
Yeah.
So I've been reading that book, and they were talking about it's a big one. So regenerative farming, highly recommend it. I've enjoyed it very much. It is Mark Shepard, but one of his I think he's devoted at least one, maybe two chapters to talking about monoculture farming and the calories in corn. Right. And so specifically they were talking, so a corn farmer will tell you, I feed the world and I provide 19 million calories per acre. All right.
Right.
Well, immediately half of those calories are used for biofuels, so we don't actually ingest them. Right. There's absolutely no vitamin C or B12 within corn, so you're nutritionally deficient right off the start. And we know about scurvy, and we know about anemia associated with B12 deficiency. And so number one, you're not feeding the world, because even though there are calories there, you're not nutritionally proficient with that one substance. Well, if you take and pull out the calories that go to various different things, you're really providing about 3 million calories per acre, even though the corn itself generates 19 million. The most interesting thing to me about that discussion was talking about the energy utilization through photosynthesis. So if you think about farmers in a certain way, what farmers are doing is farmers are harvesting sun energy. Right. Everything that we do is harvesting sun energy. So your plant itself, and this goes back to your bioenergetics, your plant itself grows, and it really only utilizes a good bit of solar energy at its very end,
right,
and then it dies. Mm-hmm. So annual plants,
but it struggles.
They really are doing very little to harvest that solar energy per acre. And then it's not, and then for a big percentage of the year, they're actually gone because of their life cycle, right, which is the plant's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. How awesome would it be to have a perennial? So for me, permaculture is a perennial environment that you don't replant every year for the majority of those things. Maybe
you don't disturb that soil well.
You don't disturb.
You're building that,
providing the nutrient and inputs in itself, and really you're harvesting the manna back, as right, it's being provided.
And you're eating the healthy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So you get diversity.
I'm definitely like a proficiency kind of person, like productivity and being efficient, and having to plant something once, doing less work, getting more out and year round. ideal. That I don't. If people look at it like from a like healthful standpoint, if they look at it from an environmental standpoint, if they look at it even from just like a logic-based lazy standpoint, like permaculture, it hits everybody's needs.
Yeah, I just got to maintain it. Eli, right? Eli's a fanatic. I mean,
So does permaculture have a definition? Is there like a what is maybe the better question? What's your
it's
definition?
permanently cultured. I mean, that to me, that's
So
how
by culture, you're talking about just like I was talking about earlier with an incubator. So it's a culture media within itself that provides that.
That's right.
I came it's funny that you said like permanently, because when I first heard the term permaculture, what came to mind was permeability. And so if something's permeable, it basically is able to diffuse throughout. And so I thought about basically like plants with interactive root systems feeding off of each other.
Oh, that's happening though. That is happening.
The benefits of permaculture is that you have things diffusing out, and diffusion is actually a passive energy process. So I just thought
there's also infusion as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think one of the biggest things and I think this goes to what you're saying, one of the biggest things that Eli taught me was that most of the deserts in the world right now were human-made deserts.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't. It's not a. I mean, in my mind, deserts are because the environment for whatever it was, things don't grow very well there. But it's because we either had a lot of cattle,
it's a rich place to grow,
or we cut down all the trees, or
right.
basically humans went in and over the last millennia, 50,000 years, have changed the environment so that things now don't, they're out of whack.
Right.
Basically. And a good example is Iraq and Iran. Those areas used to be full of forests.
I know
they're not anymore. And so
I know you're gonna give me eyebrows tying it back to the beavers.
Yeah.
But one of the
take a shot, everybody.
We're gonna start a new drinking game. Every time I say poop or make a beaver reference, every time I say make a beaver reference, you have to use a CBD product of your choice, like our smokable flower, or every time I make a poop reference, you have to take a sip of Pretoria beer. But one of something that also that people might, especially like I guess Americans or locally will connect with is, the dust storms and dust bowls of the United States Midwest, which is like of the
1930 you're speaking of, yes.
With a lot of the large monoculture basically going, and that was a really rapid expansion of civilization and like farming and turning the land. And so that's actually in a phenomenal beaver documentary, is that's part of connected to, so a lot of the land that was part of Louisiana Purchase is affected by the monoculture forming and all of the Dust Bowl area. And because they also eradicated a lot of, but with eradicating a lot of the beavers is that now it was, as the water used to come down and travel through the center from Mississippi, it actually used to be more the land itself held more water because of the dams and being able, but also the foliage and everything else and the other benefits.
So you were talking about permeability. A lot of permaculture is water capture.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so a lot of it is utilization of that
beavers
water.
Beavers are the cover crop.
Water is the vascular system of trees. And so we suspend that water in both the culture of the roots as well as in the stalks as well as in the stems. So, so that's exactly right.
I think, and I don't know if you've mentioned it thus far, but that documentary, Biggest Little Farm, which was probably like the easiest, quickest jump for me. And I just like you said, you were really excited when you watched it because someone put vocabulary and kind of like materialized your vision. And it was phenomenal. I bought it on Amazon. They didn't warn me though. The dog dies. Okay.
Oh God!
You shouldn't have told that.
You shouldn't have told everybody that.
What's wrong with you?
I had to.
You gotta give
because there are people like me.
That must have been
but
a
it dies
profound
after
thing
10
for you.
years. It dies of old age.
It dies a wonderful, lovely, fulfilled.
It was the reason of the farm. But so we've been trying to do, and I really had dedicated, and that's the way Pretoria really came about, was the whole idea of organic agriculture and organic farming and trying to promote healthier living for all of the reasons that you talked about, for like your wife and understanding functional medicine, and that's how I got into this, and the how gut affects gut health affects overall health, including cardiovascular health,
Inflammation,
and
a lot of what you guys are saying is what drew me out of actual pharmaceutical engineering and into brewing and nutraceuticals and getting involved with like cannabinoids and all of that, and drawing back to like my roots being raised in traditional agriculture.
Hey, can I follow up on what we talked about a little bit, how I met you and all that stuff? So I kind of want to wrap up that little story.
He thought about something. I'm fixing to get a story. I can tell.
It's just that,
I admire your patience to like stick to like good for you, because I don't have that patience to come back around to a point. I've already moved on.
This is like off the cuff. We've not rehearsed this or anything, but I'm really enjoying it. But after meeting you and all that, and you invited me to come to the farm, and I think you had an event at the brewery.
We did
in Albany, and I came out to the farm, and then you got to share me about all your ideas about the aquaponics, turning the pond into fish and fertilizer, and I saw the vision, and I said, I'm doing this, I'm growing it, and I want to be able to research more, because that's what I do. I got pharmacy, functional medicine pharmacy that we make
in Savannah. Right, and you got a nurse practitioner that works with you.
Yeah, we have the ability.
What's her name?
Charlene,
and don't you have Leslie?
Leslie as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's basically they're both working in opening up a clinic. It's functional driven, and they believe in,
and they do cannabis medicine.
Yeah, and they actually write the prescription, the medical marijuana card, and all that, and they help people do things. I mean, I've got hundreds and hundreds of people that are reordering the product because they're getting some relief from it in a big way. But at the same time, we're educating people about the functional medicine.
And that, I think, is
so
like something that has
vision.
So organic farming. So I wanted to do it, and we went through and we did the USDA certification for organic farming, and you can do organic farming incorrectly. You can do everything like you followed all the direct, and incorrectly is probably not the right word. I'm sure there's lots of ways to skin the cat, but from understanding, what I really wanted to do was this idea of permaculture and healing the soil. And when I was a kid, and maybe I go back to that, my grandfather, they farmed in Cordele, Georgia. And so when you go to his farm, they had cows, chickens, pigs, all kind of guinea fowl. They had like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 different types of birds, goats, sheep. We had, and he did 5 or 10 different crops each year, and they had fruit trees and pecans and those and orchards, and it all just seemed to fit together better. And so in understanding, and I'm a scientist, so these people were speaking the scientific language when they're talking about the difference between monoculture and biodiversity. And for whatever reason, that movie, and I'll go back to the movie. Hey, look, I'm tying it back in. It made it hit, and it gave me a
vision.
Yeah.
When I had the vision, it gave me a vocabulary to be able to even explain it to my farmers and dad and these guys, because to me, the idea just makes sense. I mean, you have taller trees to harvest more sunlight, and you have smaller trees that like to live in the shade of the taller trees. And then he talked about Eli, and I'll shut up just a second. This gets me so excited. But Eli was talking about blueberries and how they're sort of an edge of the forest type large bush, small tree, and how they need the mycelia, because we were talking about fungal mycelia and how that helps nutrient transfer. And then we talked about how one of the most modern things, or even an organic thing that we do, is acidify the soil with sulfuric acid, which kills the mycelia. Yeah. So no wonder our blueberries are suffering out here. So
we're knocking dominoes out of the string line of growth. Those animals, all those chickens, those goats, and
a big thing in this particular type of farming is the cure is the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not treating the symptom.
Yeah, the cure is the cure is the problem.
It all ties back in.
Because that ties into medicine too. Yeah. A lot of times the cure is the problem.
It all begins with the earth. That's what we're all about, the earth, from the soul to the oil.
And I actually had a very similar experience that you did with watching that movie and being exposed to the vocabulary, because it it also kind of validated what I had experienced with farming in Vermont with my grandparents versus like being exposed to other kinds of farming, especially down here. And it was very hard to, I don't even think my grandfather could verbalize that he was like practicing permaculture, mainly because he doesn't speak English very well.
Right.
But that's again, like language limits you on what you're able to explain. So I was just like, oh yeah, like this is farming, and coming out elsewhere and being like, oh, it doesn't work. Like all these people in Vermont who are doing permaculture, or all the people in Poland and Germany who are also using traditional symbiotic techniques,
You
they
know where
have
that come from?
significantly
That came
less.
from the parents and grandparents.
Yes,
and all
it
that.
is.
It was
It's
passed
part of
on.
culture.
Then the culture of wow, we got synthetic chemicals. We don't have to work for it, and you know, it just the art of growing food or taking care of our body.
The art really.
is lost or has been lost, but that's what we're working on.
But
So there's a good explanation for that, and we'll talk about it in just a second.
The healthcare or the health of those people in those areas was significantly different than when I came to like New Jersey or down in like more suburban like Georgia and South Carolina, where again it was like monoculture, because these people are being exposed to food and environments that weren't part of symbiotic and exposed to synthetics.
So here's something I was interested in. Why did you decide to use moringa oil in your CBD tinctures as opposed to other? Like, where did that come from?
Well, are we on?
Yeah.
Oh wow!
This is how you do it.
Oh, I didn't know.
Surprise!
Well, no. Basically, the moringa oil is. I got studying the plant, and a friend of mine introduced me and gave me some seed, and I grew it, and it was a phenomenal tree. It's called the Drumstick Tree in native land, and they actually
What
use
is it native to? Where is it native to?
India and a certain part of Africa. But there's big pods, and these pods got these like 1-inch circumference little nuts, and we squeeze that and get the oils out. The leaf is like super nutrition. It's probably the most nutritional plant God made in the earth.
Really?
I mean, it's got all your miners and minerals and your amino acids just from a plant. So I just started playing with it. Then I kind of did a little bit more research, and I feel like to me that the moringa is a receptor enhancer, if you will. That actually would allow you to uptake
Is that
more.
a Claudism or is that a?
Yeah, that's my own.
That's a
I
Claudism.
claim it. That's Claudism.
I like that.
Hey, that's
Yeah.
like I've had gut feelings before, and it's taken a while to like
But no-
explain in normal people
Right.
terms why this tipped me off. And God bless Kathy Blakey at the lab, because she, after like a couple of my gut feelings have proved true, she's like, okay, like I'll wait for your brain to catch up to explain.
Yeah, but no, it's just basically it just we got different results. And I mean, can I put a scientific point to it? No. But I know that the oil, and there's enough study on the plant itself and the oil itself that I know it's really beneficial and functionally. And it's just, people tell me. So, I mean, it's not that Claude's doing it and people are reactive. But no, the moringa oil, we were going to put it in a moringa plantation in Savannah to actually, start processing our stuff. Everything that we grow,
I definitely need to
we process ourselves. And you're the guy that does our cannabis.
Cannabis. That's right. So we're going to talk a little bit about cannabis.
I definitely need to get some of your CBD tinctures and whatnot. Now that we have grown and processed your hemp, and we'll be having it in tinctures, I'll definitely have to try some of your with the moringa. I am not above subjecting my body for science, okay? And so I will.
Yeah,
I will do a test study. Of,
So
like,
to be
moringa
a
oil.
soil to oil partner with True Earth,
Yeah.
you have to go through your protocols,
Yep.
and we did that this year. And
No,
so,
well, actually, we did that last year.
did this last year.
Right,
Yeah.
last year. Well, it was like a rush.
so we were farming during the pandemic.
Yeah, we were
We farmed.
getting it. We're staying
Yeah.
outdoors and keeping our distance, right? But anyway, no, and I'm very passionate about what I've developed, and it's POP, pot on point, and we've done that. So we treat every plant site
On point.
on point. That way you don't have to disturb the rest of the soil of the field. You don't churn it up. You just leave the food web intact. But you're just like really shoring up this one spot. And use the fertilizer that I do, which is our true.
And you have a protocol for fertilizer
Yeah.
it's not distribution, but fertilizer application.
Application, that's right. And then, I developed this new type of farming device, or augmented some old device that actually we did one for you, or y'all did it, retrofitted it to do the subsoil, and where we inject our fertilizer and some biological tea that we developed, you're making, like way below the soil level, like 18 to 22 inches below the hard pan. And it's crazy what
That's like
the result.
beneficial Botox for the earth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So one of the things I learned from you and Eli when we had our event over in Cordele, or no, over in Savannah.
Right.
And once again, event at the farm, March 20th, Permaculture. We're going to have several speakers, but
I'll be here.
he'll be there. So one of the things that I learned was that that soil compaction hurts plant health, and it wasn't something that was intuitive to me. So how does your subsoiling help with the soil compaction?
I'll give you an example. I have a very good friend. His name is David Little. He works for a big oil company, essential oil company, and I went out to his farm, and he's just validated what I've been thinking. And so blueberry bushes or lavender bushes, they grow, literally goes down the soil in Utah and takes a 90-degree turn, and it's growing like long ways out. So that means that the root doesn't have the root pressure to actually penetrate that. So it's having to reach out sideways to get in nutrients. Well, a blueberry bush, the root on it could actually go 16 feet below the soil level. But the hard pan stops that. So they're not able to get to new levels of nutrients or anything like that. So by breaking the subsoil, with the subsoil, breaking the hard pan, you're allowing the microbes to go through that hard pan and breaks it up chemically, emulsifies it, and you can kind of play around with it and make clay. But if you were just trying to get it up, you can't beat it with a hammer.
Yeah, but it allows that taproot to get down to where it has, it can survive lack of rain. It gets nutrients from all of that area.
Permeable.
Yeah, it makes it permeable. Very good.
Well, the big thing too is once you ever penetrate it, and you're able to grow crop, because typically when you go into a field, there's nothing there's been planted for a while. So the hard pan keeps the new growth. So then once you get it all going, the blueberry bushes keeps it aerated. And, we do the fertilizer on top of the feeding microbes, on top of the ground or the plant and foliar feed. So it's made a big difference. That crop that we grew here together, I mean, we yield out, I would, based on my estimate, about 40% more biomass. And we actually, I think that, I don't know, were you there when they process our stuff? I think it took
we
only
extracted it at greater than 15%. So that's 15% is kind of the top end. So it's a good.
But not only that, it only took 18.6 pounds of biomass to create the liter.
And I will say from like personal experience, that like the ratios and everything else like that, and actually like physically inspecting, I've looked at literally every bag of biomass that has come in from the state of Georgia this year, and your stuff was very, very how we would say sticky, like full of oil.
Pristine.
Yeah.
Healthy.
But also the terpenoids, and you guys actually did cherry wine as your strain. Sorry,
I think you got some there, right?
You got some there.
And so
well, it's our own genetics, so
hi, my name's Liv, and I have ADHD, and I self-medicate via cannabinoids. I have not had any today, but it was actually, I don't know. I feel like a makeup tutorial, but this is like significantly better. This one, but it's very sticky, resinous, really good bud, really great trichomes. Just like the initial like sensory analysis of this.
Yeah.
And so we knew nothing about, so the funny part is we've taken it to several places and that we're like, because the analysis of it was really good, but we know nothing about creating flour for like either, like extracting it was one thing, like we didn't for the smokable component of it or any of that.
Well,
And
I'm
we
about to.
we don't know any. We didn't know anything about it. So we'll keep working on it. But we did a good job.
Yeah,
I think
really
though
good
that
job.
this is you guys made a wonderful product though for what I would call like multi-use CBD flower for being able to use it for extraction into oil, but also as a smokable product.
Right, it was a phenomenal crop.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this, Trip. A plant is got survival, instinct just like we do, and its job is to repopulate itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if that plant is growing and it doesn't have the nutrients, it's going to struggle to get to the end. So I mean, it's just trying to make some more seeds, some tomatoes, whatever. But if you give it what it needs, it's going to do the best that it can. If it's not there, it cannot make that extra 2 pounds of tomato per bush. But that's the philosophy, and all of our stuff is all natural and organic, and you put it there, and we have an application rate that's pretty unique because it doesn't dissipate. Once you use the fertilizer, it stays in the soil. So the first 2 years of when starting out this program, you just use 12 gallons per acre, and then the following 2 years you use 8 gallons per acre, and then from then on it's 6 gallons, and all you do and
It's almost like you have a three-phase system. One is like inoculation, and then eventually you just get to maintenance, which is, I guess, again, ties into like the whole idea of permaculture is that, it takes a while to start the systems, but eventually they feed off each other. And, after several years, it's way less energy input from you. But it's just like starting a chemical reaction. It does require some activation energy. And so you guys are basically, well, yeah. But once you get past, and that keeps people from doing a lot of things in their life. But once you get past that activation energy point and it is like all downhill and catalyzes everything, like that is where like the true peace and, the true, I guess, like happiness
happens.
Exactly.
In the soil and in plants as well. All those cows you're fixing to put on your phone, I mean, that's part of that.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah. So
I require at least
one of my favorite
goat.
parts of the movie was when they're talking about animals, and it's not Bill Mollison. Anyway, the permaculturist, who they hire for the movie, they make the comment that the only thing that he knew about animals. And then they had this clip where we need animals, but it's poop farm. It's basically,
they're poop pets. They are poop pets.
That's right. So
crazy.
it's decompaction and adding nutrients, and then taking our cover crops and converting them into something that we can use for composting.
Cover crop is very important.
I can't say enough about composting because that seems to be the medicine for the soil. So
that's what we've been working on here lately.
Yeah.
Again, things I didn't know and I don't even think that my grandfather like truly appreciates how much he knows. But like you said, like using them to root and whatever else, as well as using them as like little lawnmowers themselves. And everything else.
I mean, they probably just were like, oh gosh,
very
the grass
efficient
is
labor
higher over there in the orchard. Why don't we take the goats? Let's take the goats over there. I mean, a lot of it just makes sense.
It's that phrase like, I ain't got time for that. My grandfather's like, weeding in between all the orchards. Ain't got time for that. Like, just let the goat, just like the animals in, graze the cover crop, and they'll poop as they go.
You even said it yourself.
Yeah,
a minute about your grandfather and his farm and what you remember. That farm was covered with crops. It was covered with animals.
Everything's covered with animals.
Yeah, so that's diversity.
Trees.
That's all.
And I tell you what. So why don't we have? And so here's a something for everybody who lives in South Georgia. Why don't we have why does wild quail have to actually be cultivated now? It's because all the hedgerows are gone.
Yeah.
We have huge monoculture fields have large irrigation.
And they got chemical
systems.
Pressures as well.
Yeah.
From pesticide and herbicide.
Yeah.
I mean, it affects the wildlife.
That's a very good point. Yeah, definitely. So one of the things...
And the answer is not GMOs where you're putting pesticide genes into the plants, because that's another thing that people are like, oh, well, you don't have to spray chemicals if we just make the plants synthesize the chemicals themselves. And I'm like, cheat code. No, bad. Because then that's even worse, because then you ingest. Now, I'm not saying I'm against all GMOs, because if I have 3 dogs, guess what a dog is? A GMO, a genetically modified animal, because they're part of breeds that like have been selectively chosen.
Selection is the same thing as actually splicing a gene.
No, and that's where
I'll argue with you a little bit about that, but because I think,
but I take things very literally.
This is a long rabbit hole, but like for instance, the way we used to culture bees in the U.S. was they would one of the ways, which is part of that book that I in. Restoration agriculture, was they would put out 5 beehives, and the 2 beehives that weren't the best they would destroy, and so it was an evolutionary model to make, and then they would propagate the other 3 beehives that were better, and so I think So as far as one of the biggest things, and I think this pertains to what you're talking about with chemicals and GMO, one of the biggest issues with bees right now are several different diseases, and we keep putting antibiotics and we keep trying to feed the bees different things to kill the different diseases instead of there's no natural. We've taken and destroyed the habitats for bees to actually develop the evolution.
Their
evolutionary mechanisms to be able to fight the actual problem. And so what you're going to get is a monoculture of bees, which are all very similar, and then they'll be wiped out.
Yeah, that is the real problem.
Einstein said we can get rid of... and I don't remember the other thing, but we can get rid of X, Y, and Z, and we'll live, this time. But if we get rid of bees, we're pretty much done in a year.
We're done.
We're done in a year.
I mean, that's fact.
Like I said, ain't nobody got time to cross-pollinate all the plants and crops in the field.
Let me tell you, my deal with GMO. Anytime that you go buy a seed and you can't replicate that seed because you're going to use Roundup or a chemical on the field because the other plants cannot take it, there's something wrong with that.
There's something wrong with that. Oh, yeah.
So that means there's something wrong that if I don't buy this seed and I use Roundup, I can't replicate that corn. I can't repopulate. I mean, you're changing.
I also feel like it's a pretty safe bet if I try to buy the seed and it's got a trademark or a patent behind it. That's not something I want to.
No, I'm talking about the pollen. It's not cross-pollinating. It's not going to replicate. That corn, you take that corn off the stalk and ground it up like Grandpa used to. Dry it out, next season plant it. You can't do that.
No, that's part of like the patenting of it. And that's the part that blows my mind is just like, well, I understand protecting your profits, but...
I try not to go this subject.
Sorry, I apologize. I get really angry, guys.
One of the things that I want to do, which I think is right around this, was encouraging cannabis as a crop. And not only cannabis as a crop for its chemical components, because I think it was something that was left by aliens, to be quite honest, because we can use it all. Like you can use the stalk. It has two different components within the stalk that can be used for either making shirts as one of the fiber components, and
we're working on that too on this project, right?
Making cement. You can use the roots. They have several different. There's a relaxation.
That is a whole nother podcast show for all of my ideas for the use of hemp. I would like to be the George Washington Carver peanut man of hemp, but as the options are limitless. Yeah. There's so much potential for hemp that I'm like. But does
I think everybody got involved in it because of the sexiness. The sexiness of growing hemp and marijuana and CBD and that part of it, but the real value is in everything else that the plant can produce. I know it's in the fiber component, it's in the roots, it's in the medicine itself that it provides, but there's so much more that the
that's what we're after.
Yeah.
So basically, anything can be made of plastic, can be made of hemp. 1 acre of hemp produces the same amount of paper as 4.1 acre of trees. That takes 15 years. Takes 15 years to grow. Hemp requires about half the amount of water than cotton does.
Yes.
And then this is 1 acre of hemp produces more oxygen than 25 acre of trees.
I'm sorry, this is like hemp environmental erotica to me. Like, yes, keep talking.
I look at this all the
time. Constitution was written on hemp paper. It lasts longer.
Washington smoked it in his white pipe.
Well, now we have things like handheld vaporizer, so.
All right. Well, if you've made it to this point in the podcast, you've actually reached
sorry.
the end. Thank you for joining us this time.
And thank you for having me.
And we will, thanks for Claude for being
wait.
here. Thanks
See
for
you on the
need to
19th.
See you on the 19th, on the 20th, March the 20th.